My sister slapped me at her wedding in front of 200 guests because I refused to give her my apartment. A judge was watching, and what happened next destroyed her marriage. Subscribe to the channel and like the video to see more stories like this. My sister slapped me in front of 200 people at her wedding because I wouldn't give her my penthouse. Turns out a judge was watching. The crack of her palm against my cheek echoed through the marble ballroom at the Riverside Manor, silencing the orchestra mid-waltz. 200 guests in formal attire froze, champagne flutes suspended halfway to lips, conversations dying mid-sentence. My sister Vanessa stood before me in her $8,000 Vera Wang gown, her face twisted with rage, chest heaving with fury. The 5-carat diamond on her finger caught the chandelier light as she raised her hand again. "You selfish bitch," she hissed, loud enough for the nearest tables to hear every word. "This is my wedding day, my special day, and you're ruining it because you won't give me what I deserve." I touched my burning cheek, tasting blood where my own teeth had cut the inside of my mouth. Around us, the wedding drama unfolded in slow motion. Vanessa's new husband, Marcus, stood behind her, looking uncomfortable, but saying nothing. Our mother rushed forward, not to check if I was okay, but to grab Vanessa's arm and whisper urgently about the guests watching. My father stood near the head table, his face red, avoiding my eyes entirely. What none of them knew, what Vanessa in her entitled behavior couldn't possibly imagine, was that her violent outburst had just been recorded by 7 different cell phones, including one held by Judge Patricia Henderson, who sat at table 12 with her husband. I'd noticed her earlier when I'd delivered Vanessa's emergency bobby pins to the bridal suite. I knew who she was because I'd testified in her courtroom 3 years ago, during a custody case involving one of my infant patients. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me explain how I ended up standing in a $200 bridesmaid dress, sporting a handprint on my face while my sister destroyed her own wedding reception. My name is Claire Morgan, and I'm 32 years old. I work as a neonatal ICU nurse at County General Hospital, which means I spend my days keeping premature babies alive while their parents fall apart with worry and hope in equal measure. It's exhausting work, both physically and emotionally, but it's what I was meant to do. I knew that from the moment I held my first tiny patient, a 1-pound baby girl who fought like hell to survive her first month of life. Vanessa is my younger sister by 4 years. Growing up, we weren't particularly close, but we weren't enemies either. We just existed in parallel universes, wanting completely different things from life. While I studied for my nursing boards and worked double shifts to pay off student loans, Vanessa dated wealthy men and waited for someone to take care of her. While I saved every spare dollar, she spent her entire paycheck from her part-time receptionist job on designer handbags and shoes. Our parents, Helen and Robert Morgan, had always treated us differently, though they'd never admit it. Vanessa was their princess, the beautiful one, the charming one, the one who would marry well and give them the glamorous life they'd always wanted by association. I was the practical one, the responsible one, the one who didn't need as much attention or support because I was obviously doing fine on my own. When I was 26, I bought my first property, a tiny studio apartment in a neighborhood that was just starting to gentrify. I'd saved for 3 years, living with 2 roommates in a basement apartment with windows at ground level where you could see people's feet walking by. I worked every holiday, picked up every extra shift, ate ramen more nights than I'd like to admit. That studio was mine, paid for with money I'd earned by holding dying babies and comforting devastated parents. 2 years later, I sold that studio for twice what I'd paid, just as the neighborhood transformed completely. I used the profit as a down payment on a 2-bedroom condo in a building with a doorman and a gym. I was 28 years old, and I owned my own home in one of the most expensive cities in the country. Vanessa, meanwhile, was still living with our parents, working 20 hours a week and spending her evenings on dating apps looking for her future husband. She'd dated a string of men, each one wealthier than the last, but none of them proposed. Our mother kept making excuses. "She's picky," Mom would say. "She knows her worth. She's waiting for the right one who can give her the life she deserves." The right one apparently was Marcus Thornton. He was 37, a mid-level executive at his father's commercial real estate firm, recently divorced and desperately trying to prove to his family that he wasn't a failure. He met Vanessa at a charity gala our mother had dragged her to, and he proposed after 4 months of dating. Vanessa called me at 2 in the morning to tell me, shrieking about the ring, the surprise proposal at an expensive restaurant, how he'd rented out the entire place just for them. "It's 3 carats, Claire," she'd gushed, as if I'd understand the significance. "He spent $40,000 on the ring alone. Can you believe it? Mom says we should do the wedding at Riverside Manor. She's already looked at dates." I'd congratulated her, genuinely happy that she'd found someone, hoping that marriage would give her the purpose and fulfillment she'd been searching for. I offered to help with wedding planning in whatever way she needed. I was her maid of honor, after all, even though she'd asked me in a text message rather than in person. The wedding planning revealed a side of Vanessa I'd always suspected was there but had never seen in full force. Nothing was good enough. The flowers were wrong, the invitations were tacky, the band wasn't prestigious enough. Every bridal shop appointment ended with her in tears or rage, convinced everyone was conspiring to ruin her special day. Our mother enabled every tantrum, agreeing that yes, the florist was an idiot, yes, the photographer was unprofessional, yes, everyone was out to get her. Marcus paid for everything without complaint, or rather his father did. The wedding budget ballooned to $150,000. The guest list grew to 200 people, most of whom Vanessa barely knew. She wanted the biggest, most elaborate wedding our social circle had ever seen, and Marcus's family was wealthy enough to make it happen. 3 months before before the wedding, Vanessa showed up at my condo unannounced on a Tuesday evening. I'd just gotten home from a brutal 12-hour shift, still in my scrubs, exhausted from losing a 28-week preemie despite everything we'd tried. I wasn't in the mood for company, but she was my sister, so I let her in. She walked through my condo like she was touring a museum, touching things, peering into my bedroom, checking out the view from my living room windows. "This place is really nice, Claire," she said, running her finger along my kitchen counter. "Much bigger than I remembered. And that view of the city skyline? Wow. Marcus would love this building. It's so central." "Thanks," I said, pulling ingredients from my fridge to make a quick dinner. "Want to stay for pasta?" "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something." She sat at my kitchen counter, folding her hands in front of her like she was about to make a business proposal. "Marcus and I have been looking at apartments for after the wedding, and everything in our price range is either too small or in bad neighborhoods. We saw a few places, but nothing felt right, you know?" I didn't know, but I nodded, stirring pasta sauce on the stove. And then I thought, why are we stressing about finding the perfect place when you already have it? She smiled brightly. "This condo is perfect for a newlywed couple. 2 bedrooms, great location, that view. It's exactly what we need." I turned to look at her, confused. "Okay, so you want recommendations for buildings in the area?" "No, silly." She laughed like I'd made a joke. "I want this apartment. You could give it to us as a wedding gift. It would solve all our problems." The wooden spoon I'd been holding clattered into the sink. "You want me to give you my home?" "Well, when you say it like that, it sounds bad." She waved her hand dismissively. "But think about it, Claire. You're single. You don't need all this space. You could move into a studio somewhere, maybe back to your old neighborhood. It would be so much easier for you, way less expensive. And Marcus and I really need something nice to start our marriage. Mom thinks it's a great idea." "Mom knows you're asking me this?" "Of course. She's the one who suggested it." Vanessa pulled out her phone, scrolling through what looked like Pinterest boards of wedding gifts. "Lots of families do stuff like this. The older sibling helps the younger one get started in life. It's normal. And honestly, Claire, you've had this place for years. Isn't it time to downgrade? You work all the time anyway. You're barely here." I stared at my sister, this person I'd grown up with, trying to find some indication that she was joking. But her face was serious, expectant, like she was waiting for me to agree to loan her a book, not hand over the home I'd worked myself to exhaustion to afford. "Vanessa, I'm not giving you my condo." Her smile faded. "Why not?" "Because it's mine. I bought it. I worked for 6 years to afford it. Why would I give it away?" "Because I'm your sister," she said, her voice rising. "Because I'm getting married and need help starting my life. Because you're being selfish." Selfish? I felt anger flooding through my exhaustion. "I'm selfish because I won't hand over the home I saved for since I was 20 years old? You have a good job. You'll buy another place eventually." She stood up, her face flushing. "Marcus and I need this now. We're starting a family. We need space. You're just one person. Why do you need a 2-bedroom condo with a doorman?" "Because I earned it." "Oh, so now you're better than me?" Vanessa's voice turned sharp. "Just because you went to nursing school and work at a hospital, you think you deserve more than me?" "That's not what I said. It's what you meant." She grabbed her purse from the counter. "You've always thought you were better than me, haven't you? Little Miss Responsible, Little Miss Independent." "Well, guess what, Claire? Some of us want more from life than working ourselves to death in a hospital. Some of us want to be happy." She stormed out, slamming my door hard enough to rattle the picture frames on my wall. I stood in my kitchen, pasta sauce burning on the stove, trying to process what had just happened. My sister had asked me to give her my home, and when I refused, she'd made me the villain. That was just the beginning. Over the next 3 months, the family betrayal intensified. My mother called me at least twice a week, always starting with pleasant conversation before pivoting to the same topic. "Vanessa's really stressed about finding an apartment," she'd say casually. "She showed me pictures of your building. It's lovely, Claire. Have you thought more about helping her out?" When I repeated that I wasn't giving away my home, Mom's tone would shift. "I don't understand why you're being so difficult about this. She's your sister. She needs your help. What's more important, a piece of property or family?" My father was more direct. He called one Sunday morning and said, "Your mother tells me you're refusing to help Vanessa with housing. That doesn't seem like you, Claire. You've always been generous. What's really going on here?" "Dad, she wants me to give her my condo, my home, the one I spent years saving for. It's just an apartment, sweetheart. You can get another one, but you only have one sister. And her wedding is coming up fast. Think about what matters." "My home matters to me." He sighed, disappointed. "When did you become so materialistic?" The sister rivalry, which had always been subtle, became aggressive. Vanessa stopped responding to my texts about bridesmaid dress fittings and bachelorette party planning. When I showed up to the fittings anyway, she was cold, answering my questions with one-word responses. The other bridesmaids, her friends from college and work, picked up on the tension and stopped including me in group conversations. At the bachelorette party, which I'd partially funded despite everything, Vanessa got drunk and announced to the table, "My sister thinks she's too good to help me out. She'd rather I start my marriage in some shitty apartment than give up her precious condo." Real sisterly love, right? Her friends murmured sympathetically while I sat there, humiliated, wondering how I'd become the bad guy in this situation. 2 weeks before the wedding, my mother called with what she framed as a compromise. "What if you didn't give Vanessa the condo, but you let her and Marcus live there for a few years, rent-free just until they get on their feet financially? The wedding is costing Marcus's family so much. This would really help them out." "Mom, I live there. It's my home. You could move back here temporarily. We have your old room. I'm 32 years old. I'm not moving back into my childhood bedroom so Vanessa can have my apartment." "Fine." Her voice turned ice cold. "But don't expect your family to support you when you need us. Remember that you chose an apartment over your sister." The final blow came 1 week before the wedding. I arrived at my parents' house for what I thought was a family dinner, only to find Vanessa, Marcus, and both sets of parents waiting in an ambush. They'd arranged an intervention to convince me to do the right thing. Marcus spoke first, looking uncomfortable but determined. "Claire, I know this is a big ask, but Vanessa and I really need your help. My father has already invested so much in the wedding, and we need to show financial independence. If we start our marriage in your condo, we can save money for a down payment on something bigger in a few years. It's a smart move for everyone. Except me," I pointed out. "Where do I live while you're saving up in my home? You'll figure something out," Vanessa snapped. "You always do. You're so independent, so capable. Surely you can find a place." Marcus's mother, a thin woman dripping in jewelry and entitlement, chimed in. "In our family, we help each other. We share resources. It's very generous when family members support the younger generation. My parents gave us their vacation home when Marcus was born. It's what families do. They gave you a vacation home, which implies they had multiple properties," I said. "I have one home, the one I live in." "Exactly," my mother said. "You only need one home, and Vanessa doesn't have any. It's simple mathematics. Two people need it more than one person." I looked at my father, hoping for some support, some acknowledgement that this was insane. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "It would make things easier for everyone, Claire. Just think about it." I stood up. "I have thought about it. The answer is no. It was no 3 months ago, it's no now, and it will be no next week at the wedding. This is my home. I earned it. I'm keeping it." Vanessa burst into tears, the kind of dramatic sobbing that made everyone in the room turn to glare at me like I physically hurt her. "You're ruining my wedding. You're ruining my life. I hate you." I walked out, and nobody followed me. That was 6 days ago. Since then, my phone had been flooded with messages from relatives I barely knew, all lecturing me about family loyalty, about entitled behavior, about how I was being selfish and materialistic. Vanessa had apparently told everyone her version of events, where she'd politely asked for help, and I'd cruelly refused to support her during the most important time of her life. Now here I was, standing in the Riverside Manor ballroom in a bridesmaid dress I'd paid for myself, with my cheek still stinging from where my sister had just slapped me in front of 200 wedding guests, including a family court judge who I recognized, but who didn't know me. What Vanessa didn't realize was that her violent outbursts, her entitled behavior captured on multiple phones, was about to teach her something our parents never had. Actions have consequences, and karma justice, I was about to discover, can arrive faster than anyone expects. The ballroom remained frozen in that horrible tableau for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. My sister's hand was still raised, her wedding dress rustling as she breathed heavily. I could feel the weight of 200 pairs of eyes on us, the silence so complete that I heard the ice shifting in someone's drink 3 tables away. Then Marcus finally moved. He stepped forward and gently lowered Vanessa's arm, his voice barely audible. "Babe, maybe we should take a minute outside." "No." Vanessa jerked away from him, her eyes blazing as she stared at me. "I'm not going anywhere. She needs to apologize. Right here, right now, in front of everyone." I touched my cheek again, feeling it raw. "Apologize for what exactly?" "For ruining my wedding day." Her voice cracked, and fresh tears started streaming down her face, ruining the professional makeup that had taken 2 hours to apply. "For being selfish and cruel and refusing to help your own sister when she needed you most." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I could hear fragments of conversations starting up again, people leaning toward each other to whisper. Most of the guests had no idea what we were arguing about, but they'd all witnessed the violence. The family betrayal was now a spectacle for strangers to judge. My mother rushed over, her face a mask of panic and anger. She grabbed my elbow hard enough to bruise and hissed in my ear, "Fix this, now. Whatever she wants, just give it to her. You're embarrassing this family." I pulled my arm free. "Mom, she just assaulted me in front of everyone. She's upset. It's her wedding day. You know how stressed she's been." Mom's voice rose to a volume meant for nearby tables to hear. "If you'd just been reasonable about the apartment situation, none of this would have happened." And there it was. My mother had just announced to a significant portion of the wedding guests that this drama was about an apartment. I watched comprehension dawn on faces around us, saw people putting pieces together, making judgments about who was right and who was wrong. An older woman at the nearest table, someone I didn't recognize, spoke up in a carrying voice. "Wait, this is about an apartment? The bride is fighting with her bridesmaid over real estate at her own wedding reception? It's complicated," my father said, appearing beside my mother. He'd maintained his distance during the actual violence, but now that witnesses were involved, he was here to manage the situation. "It's a family matter. Private." "It doesn't look very private," the woman's husband observed dryly. Vanessa spun to face them, and I recognized the wild look in her eyes. She was past the point of caring about appearances, too far gone in her entitled behavior to understand she was destroying her own event. "My sister refuses to give me her condo as a wedding gift. She'd rather I live in some terrible neighborhood than help me out. That's the kind of person she is. Selfish, materialistic, cruel." The murmurs grew louder. I heard someone say, "Give her the condo?" Another voice responded, "That's insane. You can't just give away property." A third person chimed in, "On the other hand, it is her sister's wedding." Marcus's father, a heavy-set man in an expensive suit, approached with his wife in tow. His face was red, a combination of anger and embarrassment. "Vanessa, that's enough. This is neither the time nor the place for this discussion." "But she—" Vanessa started. "Enough." His voice carried authority that made even my sister pause. "You're making a scene at your own wedding reception. Whatever issues you have with your sister can be resolved later, in private. Right now, you need to compose yourself and return to your guests." For a moment, I thought Vanessa might actually listen. Then she turned back to me, and the hatred in her eyes was so pure it made me step back. "You know what, Claire? I don't even want your stupid apartment anymore. You can keep it. You can die alone alone in it since clearly property is more important to you than family. But I want you to know that you're not my sister anymore. You're nothing to me." She grabbed Marcus's hand and pulled him toward the French doors leading to the terrace, her wedding dress trailing behind her like a white flag of surrender. My mother shot me one final glare before following them. My father hesitated, looking torn, then went after my mother. I stood there in the center of the ballroom, abandoned by my family in front of 200 strangers, my face throbbing, tasting blood in my mouth. The orchestra conductor looked uncertain, glancing between me and the doors where the wedding party had disappeared. The wedding coordinator, a stressed-looking woman with a headset, hurried over. "Are you all right?" she asked quietly. "Do you need ice for your face? Or we could call someone if you need medical attention." "I'm fine," I lied. My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. "I'm so sorry this happened. In 20 years of coordinating weddings I've never seen." She trailed off, clearly unsure what to say. "Would you like to sit down? I can bring you some water." I nodded, letting her guide me to an empty table near the back. As I sat, I noticed the judge from table 12 standing up. She said something to her husband, then walked purposefully toward the French doors where my family had disappeared. Her phone was still in her hand. The woman who'd commented earlier approached my table. She was probably in her 60s, elegantly dressed with kind eyes behind designer glasses. "Honey, do you need anything? My name is Patricia. I'm a friend of the groom's family." That was completely unacceptable. "What just happened?" "Thank you," I managed. "I'll be okay. That bruise is going to be spectacular by tomorrow," she observed clinically. "And your lip is bleeding. Here." She handed me a cloth napkin, and I pressed it to my mouth. "For what it's worth, from what I overheard, your sister is out of her mind if she thinks anyone just gives away their home as a wedding gift. That's not how the world works." Her husband joined her, carrying a glass of ice water. The groom's father is absolutely livid. He's out on the terrace reading his new daughter-in-law the Riot Act, something about embarrassing his family in front of their business associates. I took the water gratefully. Around us, the other guests had resumed conversations, but the energy of the reception had fundamentally changed. This was supposed to be a celebration, but now it felt like everyone was waiting for the next disaster. The orchestra had started playing again, but nobody was dancing. People clustered in small groups, clearly gossiping about what they'd witnessed. Judge Henderson returned from the terrace, her expression thoughtful. She made eye contact with me briefly, gave a small nod, then returned to her table. I wondered what she'd seen or heard out there. I wondered if my sister had any idea who had been watching her violent outburst, recording it on a phone that could become evidence if anyone chose to pursue assault charges. Not that I would. Despite everything, I didn't want to press charges against my own sister on her wedding day. I just wanted to go home to my apartment, the one I'd worked so hard for, and forget this whole disaster had happened. But the night wasn't finished with me yet. 20 minutes later, Vanessa and Marcus returned to the ballroom. She'd repaired her makeup somewhat, though her eyes were still red and swollen. Marcus looked shell-shocked, like he was starting to understand what kind of family he'd just married into. My parents followed them, my mother's face set in grim determination. The wedding coordinator quickly announced that dinner would be served, trying to salvage what was left of the reception. Guests found their assigned seats. I realized with a sinking feeling that as maid of honor, I was supposed to be sitting at the head table with a wedding party. There was no way I was doing that now. I stood up to leave, ready to call a ride home, when my mother intercepted me. "Where do you think you're going?" "Home. I'm not sitting at that table pretending everything's fine." "You'll do exactly that," she said through gritted teeth. "You've already caused enough of a scene. The least you can do is fulfill your role as maid of honor. Or are you going to abandon your sister completely?" "Mom," she hit me, in front of everyone. "I'm not." "Oh, stop being so dramatic. She barely touched you." My mother grabbed my wrist and started pulling me toward the head table. "You're sitting down, you're eating dinner, and you're giving your maid of honor speech. Do you understand?" I could have resisted. I could have pulled away and walked out, but years of conditioning, of being the good daughter who didn't cause problems, made me follow her. I sat down in my assigned seat, 3 chairs away from Vanessa, who wouldn't look at me. The other bridesmaids, sensing the tension, made stilted conversation among themselves. Dinner was served in courses, each one more elaborate than the last. Prime rib, lobster tail, vegetables carved into roses. The meal probably cost more per plate than I spent on groceries in a month. I pushed food around my plate, unable to eat, my face still throbbing. Marcus's best man gave his speech first. It was full of jokes about their college days, about Marcus's first failed marriage, about how Vanessa was the one who finally tamed him. People laughed obligingly. Then it was my turn. I stood up on shaking legs, looking out at 200 faces all focused on me. The woman who'd been slapped by the bride was now expected to say something nice about her. I pulled out the note cards I'd prepared weeks ago, back when I still thought my sister and I might repair our relationship eventually. The words I'd written then seemed laughably naive now. "I'm supposed to tell you all about growing up with Vanessa," I began, my voice surprisingly steady. "About the sister rivalry we had over everything from toys to clothes to who got to pick the TV channel. About how she always got her way because she was the baby, the favorite, the one who everyone adored." My mother's face went pale. I could see her mouthing, "Stop," but I continued. "I'm supposed to talk about how proud I am of her today, how beautiful she looks, how perfect Marcus is for her. And she does look beautiful. The dress is stunning. This venue is incredible. Everything is exactly how she wanted it, because Vanessa always gets what she wants." The room had gone completely silent again. Vanessa was staring at me with wide eyes, finally understanding that I wasn't going to play along. Except for one thing, my apartment, the one I bought with 6 years of savings from working 12-hour shifts at a hospital, the one I earned by holding dying babies while their parents prayed for miracles I couldn't deliver. She wanted that too, as a wedding gift, and I said no, and that apparently makes me the villain of of this story. I set down the note cards. I'm not going to stand here and pretend that what happened earlier was okay. I'm not going to make a speech about sisterly love when my face is still red from where she hit me. But I will say this. I hope Marcus knows what he's signed up for. I hope he's ready for a lifetime of never being enough, of constantly trying to satisfy someone who doesn't understand the difference between wanting and deserving. And I hope someday Vanessa learns that the world doesn't owe her anything just because she wants it. I walked away from the microphone, grabbed my purse from my chair, and headed for the exit. Behind me, the wedding drama exploded into chaos. I heard Vanessa shrieking, my mother yelling my name, chairs scraping as people stood up. I didn't turn around. I didn't stop walking. I made it to the lobby before someone caught up with me. It was Judge Henderson. "Ms. Morgan," she said, "I'm sorry to bother you, but I wanted to give you this." She handed me a business card. "I'm a family court judge. What I witnessed tonight was assault, clearly documented by multiple phones, including mine. If you decide you want to pursue charges or a restraining order, call my office. I'll make sure the right people see the evidence." I stared at the card, then at her. "Why would you do that? You don't know me." "No, but I know entitled behavior when I see it. And I know that victims of family violence often feel they can't speak up because they're told it's just family dynamics, that they should forgive and move on." She looked at me seriously. "What your sister did was criminal assault. The fact that it happened at her wedding in front of 200 witnesses doesn't make it less serious. Think about it." She walked back into the ballroom, leaving me alone with her card and a choice I never thought I'd have to make. The ride home in the taxi felt surreal. I kept checking my phone, watching the messages pile up. My father demanding I return and apologize. My mother's increasingly frantic texts about how I'd ruined everything. Several of Vanessa's bridesmaids telling me I was a terrible person. A few cousins saying they couldn't believe what I'd done. But there were other messages too. The older woman from the reception, Patricia, had somehow gotten my number and texted that I was incredibly brave. Two of Marcus's co-workers reached out to say they admired my honesty. Judge Henderson's husband sent a message saying his wife never intervenes in situations unless she sees genuine injustice, and I should take her offer seriously. When I got home, I double-locked my door and finally let myself cry. Not because I regretted my speech or standing up for myself, but because I was mourning the family I'd always wished I had. The family that would have supported me, believed me, valued me as much as they valued Vanessa's happiness. I was still sitting on my couch in my bridesmaid dress at midnight when my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I answered anyway. "Claire?" It was Marcus. He sounded exhausted. "I need to talk to you. Not about apologies or fixing things. I need to know the truth about everything that happened. Vanessa's version keeps changing, and my father is threatening to cut us off financially if she doesn't get help for her behavior. Can we meet somewhere, please?" I looked at Judge Henderson's card sitting on my coffee table, then at my reflection in the dark window. My cheek had indeed bruised spectacularly, a purple bloom spreading across my face. "Tomorrow morning," I said finally. "There's a coffee shop 2 blocks from County General Hospital. 9 o'clock. Come alone." After I hung up, I took a photo of my bruised face, then carefully filed Judge Henderson's card in my desk drawer. I didn't know yet what I was going to do, but I was done being the good daughter, the understanding sister, the one who always sacrificed for family peace. Whatever came next, I would face it on my own terms. And Vanessa was about to learn that karma justice doesn't wait for a convenient time to arrive. Marcus arrived at the coffee shop 10 minutes early, looking like he hadn't slept. His tuxedo shirt was wrinkled and untucked, his bow tie hanging loose around his neck. When he saw my face, the spectacular purple bruise spreading across my cheek, he flinched visibly. "Jesus, Claire, I had no idea it was that bad. She said she barely touched you." I sipped my coffee, saying nothing. Let him see the evidence for himself. He sat down heavily, ordered a black coffee from the waitress, and rubbed his face with both hands. Last night was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Instead, it turned into a nightmare. My father pulled me aside after you left and said if I don't get Vanessa under control, he's cutting me off from the family business. My mother cried for 2 hours. Half the guests left early. The wedding coordinator asked if we wanted to cancel the after party at the hotel, which we obviously did. "I'm sorry your wedding was ruined," I said, and I meant it. Whatever issues I had with Vanessa, Marcus had seemed like a decent guy caught in a terrible situation. "Don't apologize. This isn't your fault." He took a long drink of coffee, then met my eyes directly. "Tell me everything. The real story, not Vanessa's version. Start from the beginning." So I did. I told him about buying my studio apartment at 26, about working multiple shifts and eating ramen to save money, about selling it and buying the condo, the pride I felt owning something I'd earned entirely on my own. I told him about Vanessa showing up 3 months ago and demanding I give her my home, about my parents' pressure campaign, about the family intervention where they'd all ganged up on me. Marcus listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "She told me you'd inherited the condo from a relative," he said finally, "that it had just fallen into your lap and you were being petty about sharing it. She said you'd always been jealous of her, that you were trying to sabotage her happiness, and you believed her? I had no reason not to. She's my wife. We'd been together 8 months. You don't really know someone in 8 months, do you?" He laughed bitterly. "My father tried to warn me. He said I was rushing into another marriage too fast after my divorce, that I was trying to prove something instead of actually being in love." I didn't listen. The waitress refilled our coffees. Around us, the shop was filling with the morning crowd, nurses and doctors from County General grabbing caffeine before their shifts. A few people glanced at my bruised face, then quickly looked away. "What happened after I left?" I asked. Marcus's jaw tightened. "Vanessa had a complete meltdown. She locked herself in the bathroom and refused to come out. Your parents tried to convince convince the guests that you'd had some kind of mental break, that you were unstable and they were worried about you. But then people started showing each other the videos they'd taken. Videos of Vanessa slapping you, of your speech. It spread through the reception like wildfire. By the time we convinced Vanessa to come out, half the guests had already posted them on social media. My father's business associates were mortified. His lawyer actually came up to me and asked if I wanted him to review the prenup we'd signed, which was humiliating. He pulled out his phone and showed me. Sure enough, there were multiple videos from different angles, all showing the same thing. My sister's hand connecting with my face, the sound echoing through the ballroom, my body stumbling backward from the horse. The wedding drama had gone viral in our social circle. There's worse, Marcus continued, scrolling. Someone recorded the fight on the terrace after you left. Vanessa's screaming about how ungrateful you are, how you've always been jealous of her beauty and her relationship. Your mother's defending her, saying you've always been difficult and jealous. My father's yelling at all of you that this is the most dysfunctional family he's ever seen. He showed me that video too. I watched my sister rage at my parents, demanding they do something about me, insisting I should be forced to apologize and give her the apartment anyway. My mother agreed with everything Vanessa said, while my father stood silent, looking defeated. The worst part, Marcus said, Judge Patricia Henderson, who's on my father's board of directors, took him aside and showed him her video. She told him that what Vanessa did was criminal assault, documented with perfect clarity, and that any competent prosecutor would take the case if you decided to press charges. My hand trembled slightly on my coffee cup. She said the same thing to me. Are you going to press charges? I thought about Judge Henderson's business card in my desk drawer, about the bruise on my face that would take weeks to fade, about Vanessa's complete lack of remorse. I don't know. She's still my sister. She's also someone who physically assaulted you in front of 200 witnesses and then tried to make you the villain. Marcus leaned forward. Claire, can I be completely honest with you? Please. I think I made a terrible mistake marrying Vanessa, and I think I made that mistake because I was desperate to prove my father wrong about me, to show everyone I could make a marriage work this time. But last night opened my eyes to things I'd been ignoring during our engagement. Like what? He exhaled slowly. The way she treats service workers, for one thing. During wedding planning, she was cruel to the florist, the caterer, the venue coordinator. She made a waitress cry at our rehearsal dinner over a wrong wine order. I told myself she was just stressed, that weddings make everyone crazy. But the way she talked about you, about your work as a nurse, like it was beneath her, like you were less important because you have a real job instead of waiting for someone to take care of you. He trailed off, looking ashamed. And the apartment thing. When she first told me she was going to ask you for it, I thought she meant ask for advice on finding something similar. When I realized she literally wanted you to give her your home, I told her that was insane. She cried and said I didn't support her dreams, that family was supposed to help each other. She made me feel like I was the unreasonable one. That's what she does, I said quietly. She's always done that. Make you feel crazy for having normal boundaries. Make you the bad guy for not sacrificing everything for her happiness. Marcus nodded slowly. My father's threatening an annulment. Says he won't let me stay married to someone who could assault a family member at her own wedding. He's already talked to his lawyers. How does Vanessa feel about that? She doesn't know yet. We spent last night in separate hotel rooms. She kept calling and texting, but I didn't answer. I needed time to think without her crying and telling me her version of events. He looked at me directly. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Has she always been like this? The entitlement, the violence, the manipulation? I thought about our childhood, about the patterns I'd watched play out over and over. Yes, but my parents always enabled it, always made excuses, always blamed everyone else when she faced consequences. They created this monster, and now she doesn't understand why the rest of the world won't treat her the same way they do. That's what I was afraid of. Marcus pulled out his wallet and left money on the table for both our coffees. I have to go. I'm meeting with my father's lawyer this afternoon. But Claire, whatever you decide to do about pressing charges or getting a restraining order, I'll support it. I'll testify if you need me to. What Vanessa did was wrong, and she needs to face real consequences for once in her life. After Marcus left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, watching nurses hurry past on their way to shift change. My phone kept buzzing with messages, more from my parents, more from relatives, more from people who had opinions about what I should or shouldn't do. But there was one message that caught my attention. It was from Sarah Chen, one of my closest friends from nursing school, who I'd invited to the wedding but who hadn't been able to attend because she was working. She'd sent a link to a local news blog with a simple message. Is this you? I clicked the link. My stomach dropped. Someone had posted the videos from the wedding reception on a popular gossip blog that covered society events in our city. The post was titled, Wedding Disaster, Bride Assaults, Sister Over Real Estate. It had already been shared over 5,000 times, with hundreds of comments debating who was right and who was wrong. Most comments supported me. Imagine being so entitled you think someone should give you their home as a wedding present. The bride is clearly unhinged. That bridesmaid speech was savage and she had every right. But there were others defending Vanessa. Family should help each other. She's just one person. Why does she need a 2-bedroom condo? The bridesmaid seems jealous and bitter. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was local. Against my better judgment, I answered. Ms. Morgan, this is Jennifer Walsh from the Metro Tribune. I'm writing a follow-up story about the wedding incident that's been circulating online. Would you be willing to comment? How did you get this number? I'm a journalist. I have sources. Her voice was friendly but persistent. I've spoken with several wedding guests who witnessed the assault. They say there's a larger story here about family dynamics and entitlement. I'd love to hear your side. No comment, I said said and hung up, but the calls kept coming. 3 more journalists, 2 bloggers, and someone claiming to be from a morning talk show. I turned off my phone and went to work, where at least I could focus on something that mattered, where tiny lives hung in the balance and put my personal drama into perspective. My shift was brutal. We had 2 critical babies, one born at 24 weeks and fighting for every breath, another with a heart defect waiting for transport to a specialist hospital. I spent 12 hours in that unit, my personal problems forgotten in the face of real crisis, real fear, real stakes. It was nearly 8 at night when I finally got home, exhausted and emotionally drained. There was a package waiting outside my apartment door, small and neatly wrapped with no return address. Inside was a flash drive and a handwritten note on expensive stationery. Ms. Morgan. I took a liberty of compiling all available footage from the wedding, including my own, into a single file. Also included are statements from 3 witnesses willing to testify on your behalf should you pursue charges. You don't know me well, but I've spent 30 years working in family court. I've seen what happens when entitled behavior goes unchecked, when families enable violence, when victims are pressured to keep quiet for the sake of peace. Don't be pressured. Whatever you decide, make sure it's your choice, not theirs. Judge Patricia Henderson. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. There were 9 separate video files, all clearly labeled by date and time, each showing different angles of Vanessa slapping me. There were also scanned documents, witness statements from people I'd never met, all describing what they'd seen and offering to testify. Judge Henderson had essentially handed me everything I'd need to pursue assault charges or get a restraining order. She'd done work she had no obligation to do for a stranger because she believed in karma justice and wouldn't stand by while violence was swept under the rug. I was still processing this when someone knocked on my door. I checked the people and saw my father standing in the hallway, looking older than I remembered. I almost didn't let him in, but curiosity won. "Claire," he said when I opened the door. He didn't try to hug me, didn't ask about my bruised face. "We need to talk. If you're here to convince me to apologize to Vanessa, you can leave now." "I'm not." He walked past me into the living room, moving slowly, like he was in pain. "Your mother doesn't know I'm here. She'd kill me if she did. But after everything that's happened, after watching those videos, after seeing what everyone's saying online, I needed to talk to you." Father to daughter, honestly. I closed the door but didn't sit down. "I'm listening." He stood by the window looking out at the city lights. "I failed you. As a father, as a parent, as someone who was supposed to protect both his daughters equally, I failed you completely. And I've known it for years, but I was too much of a coward to admit it. This was not what I'd expected." I sat down slowly on the couch. "Your mother and I, we always had this idea of how our lives would go," he continued, still not looking at me. "We'd have beautiful children who would marry well, give us beautiful grandchildren, make us look good to our friends. When you were born, you were perfect, smart, capable, independent. You didn't need much from us, so we focused on Vanessa, who seemed to need everything. That's not an excuse for—" "I'm not making excuses. I'm explaining how we rationalized it to ourselves. We told ourselves you were fine on your own, that Vanessa needed more attention, more support. But the truth is, we created a monster because it was easier than setting boundaries. Every time she threw a tantrum, we gave in. Every time she demanded something unreasonable, we found a way to give it to her. And we did it at your expense." He finally turned to face me, and I saw tears in his eyes. "When she asked for your apartment, I knew it was wrong. I knew it was insane. But your mother pushed, and Vanessa cried. And it was easier to pressure you than to tell Vanessa no. And when you stood up for yourself, when you refused to be manipulated, I should have supported you. Instead, I stood by while they vilified you. Why are you telling me this now? Because I spent today watching my youngest daughter destroy her own wedding, assault her sister, and then blame everyone but herself for the consequences. I watched your mother make excuses for behavior that has no excuse. And I realized that if I don't speak up now, if I don't take responsibility for the role your mother and I played in creating this situation, then I'm complicit in whatever happens next." He walked over and sat in the chair across from me. "Marcus's father came by the house this afternoon. He's pursuing an annulment, says his son married Vanessa under false pretenses, that she misrepresented her character and her family situation. He's also considering a lawsuit to recoup wedding expenses based on the fact that Vanessa's behavior constitutes breach of good faith. Can he do that? His lawyers think so, especially with all the video evidence. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here to tell you that whatever you decide to do about pressing charges or getting a restraining order, I'll support you. Not publicly, because your mother would leave me if I sided against Vanessa. But privately, I'll do whatever you need." I stared at my father, this man who had failed me so completely, now offering too little too late. "Do you really think I need your support now? After everything?" "No," he admitted. "You've never needed us. You built your life without our help, bought your home without our money, became successful despite our neglect. But I'm offering anyway, because it's the least I can do. And because someone needs to tell you the truth, your sister has a serious problem, and until she faces real consequences, she'll never change." After he left, I sat in my apartment for a long time, thinking about entitled behavior and family betrayal and the price of keeping peace. I thought about Judge Henderson, who'd gone out of her way to help a stranger, about Marcus, who'd realized his mistake after just one day of marriage, about my father's confession, sincere but ultimately meaningless. Most of all, I thought about Vanessa, who had hit me in front of 200 people and felt she was the victim in this story. By the time I went to bed, I'd made my decision. Tomorrow morning, I would call Judge Henderson's office and schedule a meeting. I would press charges for assault. I would pursue a restraining order. And if Vanessa's world came crashing down as a result, well, that was what happened when karma justice finally caught up with entitled behavior that had gone unchecked for 28 years. Whatever Whatever came next, I would face it knowing I'd finally chosen myself over family peace. And that choice, I realized, was the most important one I'd ever made. I walked into Judge Henderson's chambers 3 days after the wedding with my documentation folder, the flash drive she'd sent me, and a resolve I'd never felt before. Her office was exactly what I'd expected. Shelves lined with legal books, framed degrees on the walls, a large desk covered in organized files. She stood when I entered, extending her hand professionally. "Ms. Morgan, thank you for coming. Please, sit down." I sat in the leather chair across from her desk, clutching my folder. "I want to press charges for assault, and I want a restraining order." Judge Henderson nodded slowly. "I was hoping you'd come to that decision, though I know it couldn't have been easy. Before we proceed, I need to make sure you understand what this process will involve." For the next hour, she walked me through everything. Filing a police report, the potential for Vanessa to be arrested, the court hearings, the restraining order terms. She explained that with the video evidence and witness statements, the case was strong, but that family court cases involving assault could get ugly when the defendant refused to accept responsibility. "Your sister will likely claim you're exaggerating, that it was barely a tap, that you're doing this out of spite," Judge Henderson warned. "Your parents may testify on her behalf. Are you prepared for that?" "Yes," I said, and I meant it. "I'm done protecting her from consequences." "Good." She pressed a button on her phone. "Linda, could you send in Officer Martinez?" A uniformed police officer entered, introducing himself as Detective Carlos Martinez from the Special Victims Unit. He'd been briefed on my case and was ready to take my official statement. For 2 hours, I recounted everything. The months of pressure about the apartment, the family intervention, the wedding reception assault, the aftermath. He recorded it all, took photos of my still visible bruise, and collected copies of the video evidence. "This is one of the clearest assault cases I've seen," Detective Martinez said when we finished. "Multiple witnesses, video from several angles, documented injury, and a clear pattern of harassment leading up to the incident. I'll file this today, and a warrant will be issued for your sister's arrest." The word arrest made it all feel suddenly intensely real. My sister would be arrested, fingerprinted, booked, all because she'd slapped me at her own wedding reception. "How long until that happens?" I asked. "Usually within 24 to 48 hours. We'll send officers to her residence. Given the high-profile nature of this case and the viral videos, there may be media interest. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about the journalists who'd already called me, about the gossip blog posts that had been shared thousands of times. "I don't have a choice, do I?" "You always have a choice," Judge Henderson interjected. "You can still walk away, pretend it never happened, let your family sweep it under the rug like they've done with her entitled behavior for years. But based on what I've seen of your sister's pattern, this won't be the last time she hurts someone. It'll just be the last time she hurts you, because eventually she'll find another target." She was right. I signed the final papers, accepted my copies of everything, and left her office feeling simultaneously empowered and terrified. The arrest happened the next morning while I was at work. I only found out because my mother called me 17 times in a row, finally leaving a voicemail that was more scream than words. "How could you do this to your own sister? The police came to the house. They arrested her in front of the neighbors. You've destroyed this family. Are you happy now?" I wasn't happy, but I was at peace with my decision. The news spread fast. By lunch, the gossip blog had updated their original post with breaking news about the arrest. The headline read, "Wedding assault case takes criminal turn. Bride arrested after viral video." They'd somehow obtained Vanessa's mugshot, which showed her looking simultaneously furious and terrified. Her wedding ring visible in the photo as they'd arrested her at her parents' house where she'd fled after Marcus kicked her out of their hotel suite. My phone exploded with messages, some supportive, many not. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years emerged to tell me I was tearing the family apart. Vanessa's friends created a social media campaign with the hashtag #JusticeForVanessa, claiming I'd orchestrated a vindictive attack on an innocent bride. They conveniently ignored the video evidence of her hitting me, but there was another narrative building too. Women who'd experienced similar family betrayal started sharing their stories in response to the news. The comments section on every article became a battlefield between people who thought I was right to press charges and people who thought family should forgive anything. Marcus called me that afternoon. "My father's lawyers are using your assault charges in the annulment proceedings. They're arguing that Vanessa's violent outburst and subsequent arrest prove she misrepresented her character and temperament during our relationship. The judge is fast-tracking the annulment hearing." "How is she?" "Last I heard, my father bailed her out after she spent 4 hours in a cell. She's staying with your parents. Her lawyer is some guy your father found who specializes in making criminal charges go away for wealthy families. He's already calling this a misunderstanding, saying you're vindictive and mentally unstable." "Of course he is. Claire, there's something else you should know. The gossip blog reached out to me for an interview. They wanted my side of the story, what it was like being married to Vanessa for less than 24 hours before everything fell apart. I didn't give them a quote, but I did give them something else." "What?" "The audio recording from our couple's counseling session. The one where Vanessa admitted she was marrying me primarily for my father's money and social connections, that she saw me as a stepping stone to the life she deserved." I sat down slowly. "Marcus, that was confidential." "I know, and I'll probably face consequences for releasing it, but people need to understand what kind of person she is. They need to see that this isn't about one slap at one wedding. It's about a pattern of manipulation and entitlement that's been enabled for her entire life." The audio dropped online that evening, and it was devastating. In the recording, you could hear Vanessa clearly saying she'd accepted Marcus's proposal because he had money and connections, that she didn't love him but thought she could learn to, that his divorce made him desperate enough to agree to anything she wanted. The wedding drama drama had evolved into a full-scale scandal. My mother showed up at my apartment that night, pounding on the door hard enough that my neighbors looked out their peepholes. I almost didn't answer, but I knew she wouldn't leave. "You've destroyed her," my mother said the moment I opened the door. Her makeup was smeared, her hair disheveled. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in 4 days. "She has a criminal record now. Marcus is annulling the marriage. His family is suing her for fraud. She's getting death threats online. All because you couldn't just give her your apartment and let her be happy. She assaulted me, Mom, in front of 200 people. This isn't about the apartment anymore. It was barely a slap. You're so dramatic, making it into this huge criminal case when it was just a family argument that got out of hand. If it was just a family argument, why did 7 people record it? Why did a judge offer to help me press charges? Why does my face still have a bruise 4 days later?" My mother's face contorted with rage. "You know what? You're not my daughter anymore. Any daughter of mine would put family first, would protect her sister, would understand that forgiveness is what families do. You're selfish and vindictive and cruel, and I hope you're happy living in your precious apartment all alone for the rest of your life." She left, slamming the door so hard a picture frame fell off my wall and shattered. I cleaned up the broken glass, thinking about how my mother had just disowned me for pressing charges against someone who'd committed assault, how she'd chosen to support the person who'd done wrong rather than the person who'd been wronged. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for the following week. In the meantime, the story continued to evolve. A local news station did a segment on family violence and entitlement culture, using Vanessa's case as an example. A women's rights organization issued a statement supporting my decision to press charges. The gossip blog had received so much traffic from covering the story that they'd assigned a full-time reporter to follow every development. 3 days before the hearing, I received an unexpected visitor at the hospital. I was on my lunch break in the staff cafeteria when Marcus's father, Richard Thornton, asked if he could join me. "Ms. Morgan, I apologize for the intrusion. I know you're working, but I wanted to speak with you before the hearing." I gestured to the empty chair across from me, wary. "About what?" "About my son's annulment case. Our lawyers have built a strong argument based on fraud and misrepresentation, but your assault charges and the restraining order strengthen our position significantly. I wanted to ask if you'd be willing to provide testimony about your sister's pattern of entitled behavior and manipulation." "You want me to testify against my own sister?" "I want you to tell the truth about who she is. My son married her believing she was someone entirely different than the person who emerged at that wedding reception. If she'd shown her true nature earlier, he never would have proposed. That's fraud, pure and simple." I thought about Marcus, who'd seemed genuinely devastated by everything that had happened. What happens if the annulment is granted? The marriage is voided as if it never happened. Marcus returns to his previous unmarried status. And more importantly, Vanessa doesn't get a dime from our family, no alimony, no settlement, nothing. She walked away from my son's first marriage with nothing because there was a prenup, and she'll walk away from this one the same way if I have anything to say about it. "This feels like karma justice playing out," I said quietly. Richard smiled grimly. "It is. Your sister thought she could manipulate her way into our family's wealth. She thought she could assault you without consequences, that her family would protect her, that money and connections would make criminal charges disappear. She was wrong on every count. I'll testify," I decided, not because I want to hurt her, but because Marcus deserves the truth, and because maybe, just maybe, facing real consequences will force her to change. The restraining order hearing arrived. I walked into the courtroom with Detective Martinez and a lawyer Judge Henderson had recommended, someone who specialized in family violence cases. Vanessa sat across the aisle with her attorney, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit who'd built his career on making problems disappear for wealthy clients. My parents sat behind Vanessa, both refusing to look at me. Behind me sat Marcus, his father, Judge Henderson, and surprisingly, several of my co-workers from the hospital who'd asked to come support me. The hearing lasted 3 hours. My lawyer presented the video evidence, the witness statements, the police report documenting my injuries. Vanessa's lawyer argued that it was a family dispute blown out of proportion, that I was vindictive and using the legal system for revenge, that his client was deeply sorry for a momentary lapse in judgment. Then came the testimony. I described the months of harassment, the family intervention, the assault itself, the complete lack of remorse afterward. Detective Martinez outlined why he'd recommended pressing charges. Judge Henderson explained why she'd gotten involved, describing patterns she'd seen in family court where entitled behavior escalated when unchecked. Vanessa's lawyer called my mother as a witness. She testified that I'd always been jealous of Vanessa, that I was exaggerating a minor incident, that I was tearing the family apart over nothing. She lied about several key facts, claiming Vanessa had barely touched me, that I'd provoked her by refusing to help with housing. Then my lawyer played the wedding videos again, showing clearly that none of my mother's testimony matched reality. When it was Vanessa's turn to testify, she took a stand looking perfectly styled and tearful. She apologized profusely, claimed she'd been under tremendous stress, said she'd never done anything like this before and never would again. She looked directly at me and said, "Claire, I'm so sorry. I love you. You're my sister. I just want our family back together." It was a masterful performance. I almost believed her myself. Then my lawyer stood up for cross-examination. "Ms. Thornton, you testified that you've never behaved violently before. Is that correct?" "Yes." "Then can you explain these?" My lawyer presented 3 incident reports from Vanessa's college, all documenting altercations with roommates, one involving thrown property, another involving threatening behavior. "Or this police report from 2 years ago when you were arrested for attacking your ex-boyfriend's car with a golf club." Vanessa's face went white. Her lawyer objected loudly, but the judge overruled him. Apparently, my lawyer had done her her homework. Those were different situations, Vanessa stammered. I was younger, I was going through things. You were 24 when you attacked the car, just 4 years ago. And you were 20 during the college incidents. You're 28 now. It seems like there's a consistent pattern of violent outbursts when you don't get what you want, doesn't it? The hearing ended with the judge granting my restraining order. Vanessa was ordered to stay at least 500 feet away from me at all times, to have no contact direct or through third parties, and to complete anger management counseling. The assault charges would proceed to trial unless she accepted a plea deal. As I left the courtroom, I heard my mother sobbing behind me, my father trying to comfort her. Vanessa's lawyer was already on his phone, probably calling whoever was paying his substantial fees to explain why they'd lost. Marcus caught up with me in the hallway. Thank you for testifying. The annulment hearing is next week. With everything that came out today, my lawyer thinks it's basically guaranteed. I'm sorry you got caught in the middle of all this. I'm not. If I hadn't married her, I never would have seen who she really was. Better to learn now than 5 years and 2 kids from now. He hesitated and asked, are you going to be okay? I looked at the restraining order paperwork in my hands, thinking about my mother's tears, my sister's false apologies, the family I'd lost in pursuit of karma justice. Eventually, yes, I think I will be. What none of us knew yet was that the story was about to take one final, unexpected turn that would change everything. The unexpected turn came 2 weeks after the restraining order hearing. On a Wednesday morning when I was 3 hours into my shift, my charge nurse pulled me aside with an odd expression on her face. Claire, there's someone here to see you. She says it's urgent and that you know her. A Teresa Morgan? My Aunt Teresa. My father's younger sister, who I hadn't seen in almost 5 years. She'd moved to Seattle after a messy divorce and had minimal contact with the family. I couldn't imagine why she'd flown across the country to see me. I found her waiting in the family consultation room, looking older but well. She stood when I entered, her eyes immediately going to the fading bruise on my cheek. Claire, God, look at you. I saw the videos online, read all the articles. I had to come. Aunt Teresa, I'm working. I only have a few minutes. Your father called me last week. He told me about the wedding, about the assault charges, about the restraining order. He was drunk, crying, saying the family was falling apart and it was all his fault. She sat down heavily. He told me things I wish I'd known years ago, things that made me realize I needed to tell you the truth about your family. I sat down across from her, confused. What truth? She pulled out her phone and showed me old photos, pictures from when I was a toddler, before Vanessa was born. Me with my parents, all smiling, looking like a normal, happy family. Then photos from after Vanessa arrived, and the shift was visible even in pictures. My parents' attention, their smiles, their focus, all turning toward the new baby, while I stood at the edges of frames. Your mother had postpartum depression after you were born, Teresa said quietly. Severe postpartum depression. She could barely function for the first year of your life. Your father worked constantly to pay medical bills, and I actually moved in for 6 months to help take care of you. You were a colicky baby, crying all the time, and your mother couldn't handle it. She'd tell me she felt nothing when she looked at you, that she was broken for not feeling the maternal love everyone talked about. This was information I'd never heard before. She got better though, right? Eventually. By the time you were 2, she was mostly functional. But I think something fundamental shifted in her relationship with you. She associated you with the worst period of her life, with feeling inadequate and broken. When Vanessa was born and your mother didn't have postpartum depression again, she was so relieved, so grateful. Vanessa became proof that she wasn't broken, that she could be a good mother. So she just decided I didn't matter? Not consciously. But over the years, yes, she prioritized Vanessa's needs over yours, because Vanessa made her feel like a successful parent, while you reminded her of when she felt like a failure. Your father went along with it because it was easier than confronting your mother's unresolved trauma. I processed this, trying to fit it into the narrative of my childhood. It explained so much. The favoritism, the different standards, the way my needs were always secondary. But it didn't excuse anything. Why are you telling me this now? Teresa leaned forward. Because your father also told me about the apartment situation, and I need you to know something. That condo you own, your grandmother, my mother, left money in her will specifically for you. $50,000. Your parents were supposed to give it to you when you turned 25. My blood went cold. What? They never told you, did they? Mom died when you were 23. She left equal amounts to all her grandchildren, but yours had a specific stipulation that it was to help you establish yourself, buy a home, start your adult life. I assumed they'd given it to you years ago. They gave me nothing. I saved for 6 years to buy that studio apartment. Every dollar came from my own work. Teresa's face hardened. Then they kept your inheritance. Probably spent it on something for Vanessa. That's theft, Claire. Legal theft from your own parents, but theft nonetheless. The room spun slightly. My entire narrative of self-sufficiency, of earning everything on my own, had been built on a foundation of my parents stealing money that was rightfully mine. Money my grandmother had specifically left to help me do exactly what I'd done anyway, but with years less struggle. Do you have proof of this? I have a copy of the will. I brought it with me. She pulled a folder from her bag, handing it over. Inside was my grandmother's last will and testament, clearly stating that $50,000 was to go to Claire Morgan for the purpose of housing or education. There's more, Teresa continued. When your father called me drunk and confessing everything, he mentioned that they'd also taken a loan against your credit without your knowledge when you were 19. They needed money for Vanessa's college fund and used your identity. It ruined your credit score right when you were starting out, made it harder for you to get loans or credit cards. Do you remember that? I did remember. I'd been denied for a student credit card for a small loan to help with nursing school expenses. I'd always assumed it was because because I was young with no credit history, never suspecting my parents had destroyed my credit before I'd even had a chance to build it. He said he's been carrying guilt about it for years but didn't know how to tell you. The wedding incident broke something in him. Watching his daughters become enemies, watching his wife choose sides so viciously, seeing you stand up for yourself while they tore you down, it finally made him see what they'd done to you your entire life. My hands shook as I held the will. Did they do the same to Vanessa? Take her inheritance too? No. Vanessa got her full $50,000 when she turned 25, 3 years ago. Your mother told me they used it to fund Vanessa's lifestyle while she looked for the right husband, clothes, trips, the right gym membership, whatever she needed to attract wealthy men. The family betrayal ran even deeper than I'd imagined. Not only had they stolen from me, they'd used that stolen money to enable Vanessa's entitled behavior. They'd sabotaged my credit while funding her quest for a rich husband. They'd let me struggle and work myself to exhaustion while handing Vanessa everything. I need to get back to work, I said, my voice hollow. I have babies depending on me. Claire, you should talk to a lawyer. What they did was illegal. I know, I'll handle it. I stood up, clutching the folder. Thank you for telling me. I mean that, but I need to think about this. That evening, I sat in my apartment, the apartment I'd bought entirely with my own money because my parents had stolen my inheritance, and made phone calls. First to my lawyer, who was appalled and immediately started discussing options for recovering the stolen funds plus interest. Then to Detective Martinez, who confirmed that identity theft, even by parents, was a serious crime. Finally to Marcus, who had become an unexpected friend through this nightmare. They stole from you, he said flatly when I told him. On top of everything else, they literally stole your inheritance and destroyed your credit. And they were going to let Vanessa manipulate me into giving her my apartment, which I only managed to buy because I worked myself half to death to overcome the financial sabotage they'd created. What are you going to do? I looked at the will, at the proof of theft, at the documentation my lawyer was already preparing. I'm going to make them face consequences. All of them. Vanessa for the assault, my parents for the theft and identity fraud. I'm done protecting people who've never protected me. The next morning, I filed a police report for identity theft and a civil lawsuit for recovery of my inheritance plus damages. My lawyer also discovered that by using my identity for a loan without permission, my parents had committed federal fraud. The case was strong, documented, and devastating. My father called me that night, his voice shaking. Claire, Teresa told me she gave you the will. Please, we can work this out privately. Don't involve lawyers and police. I know we were wrong, but we're still your parents. You stole from me. You sabotaged my credit when I was 19. You let me struggle for years while giving Vanessa everything, including money that was meant for me. And you were going to stand by while she manipulated me into giving her my home, the home I only managed to buy because I overcame everything you did to hold me back. We can pay you back. The $50,000 plus interest, whatever you want. Just don't press charges. Your mother can't handle this stress, and the legal fees will bankrupt us. Where's the money now? The $50,000 you stole? Silence. Then quietly. Gone. We spent it over the years. Medical bills, credit card debt, helping Vanessa with expenses. We don't have it to give back. Then you'll face the legal consequences. Just like Vanessa is facing consequences for assault. Just like Marcus faced consequences by having his wedding destroyed. Actions have consequences, Dad. It's time you learned that. He hung up. 20 minutes later, my mother called, screaming accusations. I was destroying the family. I was vindictive. I was mentally unstable. I listened for 30 seconds, then blocked her number. The lawsuit and criminal charges made the news within days. The gossip blog that had been following the wedding drama updated their coverage. Wedding assault saga takes dark turn. Parents accused of stealing inheritance from daughter they pressured to give up home. The narrative shifted dramatically. People who'd defended my parents, who'd said family should work things out privately, suddenly saw the bigger picture. This wasn't just about one slap at one wedding. It was about a lifetime of financial abuse, emotional manipulation, and systematic favoritism that had culminated in violence and theft. Marcus's annulment hearing happened 2 days later. I testified about Vanessa's pattern of entitled behavior, about how my parents had enabled and funded it, about the apartment situation that had triggered the wedding assault. With the new information about the stolen inheritance, the judge saw clear evidence that Vanessa had been raised to believe she deserved whatever she wanted, regardless of who got hurt. The annulment was granted. Marcus's marriage was voided as if it had never happened. Vanessa's lawyer tried to argue for some kind of settlement, but with the fraud charges against her parents making headlines, even he could see it was hopeless. Vanessa walked away with nothing except a criminal record and a pending assault trial. 3 weeks after Aunt Teresa's visit, I sat in a conference room with my parents and their lawyer, working out the details of the civil settlement. They couldn't repay the full amount they'd stolen, but they agreed to a payment plan, to publicly acknowledge what they'd done, and to cover all my legal fees. They looked broken, aged, humiliated. My mother couldn't even look at me. My father did all the talking, his voice flat and defeated. When we finished signing papers, he asked if we could talk privately. Claire, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know what we did was unforgivable, but I want you to understand that we did love you. We just loved you badly. We loved you in ways that hurt you, and we're going to have to live with that for the rest of our lives. Do you know what the worst part is? I asked. It's not the money. It's not even the favoritism. It's that you stole my inheritance and let me believe I was doing it all on my own. You let me work myself to exhaustion, let me sacrifice everything, let me think I was completely self-sufficient when the whole time you'd sabotaged me from the start. You stole my grandmother's gift and my credit score, and then asked me to give up the home I'd somehow managed to buy despite your theft. That's not bad love. That's not even love at all. He had no response to to that. What could he say? The assault trial was scheduled for 2 months later, but Vanessa's lawyer negotiated a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to simple assault, received probation, community service, and mandatory anger management counseling. She also had to write a formal apology letter, which her lawyer clearly drafted, full of therapeutic language about taking responsibility and learning from mistakes. I read it once and threw it away. Words on paper meant nothing compared to years of entitled behavior and violence that had finally caught up with her. The day after the plea deal was finalized, I received an unexpected message on LinkedIn. It was from one of the wedding guests, a woman named Alexandra who'd been sitting near the front during the reception. "Claire, I hope it's okay that I'm reaching out. I was at your sister's wedding and witnessed everything that happened. I wanted you to know that watching you stand up for yourself, refuse to be manipulated, and pursue real consequences when your family betrayed you changed something in me. I've been in a similar situation with my own family for years, always the one who sacrifices, always expected to give without receiving. Your courage inspired me to finally set boundaries. I just wanted to say thank you. You'll never know how many women you've helped by refusing to stay silent." I stared at that message for a long time, tears running down my face. Not tears of sadness, but of release. The karma justice I'd sought hadn't just been for me. It had become something larger, something that mattered to strangers who'd seen their own struggles reflected in mine. 6 weeks after the wedding that changed everything, I stood in my apartment, my home that I'd earned despite every obstacle my family had created. I looked around at the space I'd refused to give up, the symbol of my independence that had triggered such destruction, and I realized something important. I hadn't destroyed my family. My family had destroyed itself through years of favoritism, theft, manipulation, and violence. I'd simply refused to participate in the destruction anymore. Vanessa was starting her community service, living with our parents in their increasingly tense household, facing the reality that no rich man was going to marry someone with her reputation. Marcus was dating someone new, someone his father actually approved of, someone who apparently treated service workers with respect. My parents were making their monthly payments on the settlement, working through their 50s to repay money they'd stolen from their own daughter. And I was exactly where I'd always been, working my shifts at the hospital, saving babies when I could, comforting parents when I couldn't, living in the home I'd earned, building a life on my own terms. The wedding drama had exposed family betrayal that ran deeper than anyone imagined, but it had also freed me from a family that had never valued me, never supported me, never loved me the way I deserved to be loved. Sometimes karma justice means winning, sometimes it means walking away, and sometimes it means both. 1 year later, I sat in the same coffee shop where Marcus and I had first talked after the wedding, watching the morning rush of nurses heading to County General. The barista knew my order by heart now. Large black coffee, no sugar. Simple, straightforward, no complications. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Chen, my friend from nursing school. "Turn on channel 7. You're going to want to see this." I pulled up the live stream on my phone. It was a local morning show segment about women who'd overcome family betrayal. The host was interviewing 3 women, all of whom mentioned my case as inspiration for leaving toxic family situations. One woman had escaped financial abuse from her parents. Another had filed a restraining order against a violent sibling. The third had cut off her entire family after years of being the designated scapegoat. "The Claire Morgan case became a turning point," one woman said. "Seeing her refuse to back down, watching her pursue real consequences instead of just accepting that family gets a free pass to hurt you, it gave me permission to do the same. I'd been told my whole life that family was everything, that you forgive family no matter what. But Claire proved that's not true. Some behavior is unforgivable, and that's okay." The host nodded thoughtfully. Her sister's assault at that wedding reception went viral, but it was the deeper story of systemic favoritism, stolen inheritance, and identity theft that really resonated. People saw their own families reflected in that dynamic. I turned off the stream, feeling strange. I'd never intended to become some kind of symbol. I just wanted my family to face consequences for hurting me. But apparently, that simple act of self-defense had meant something to other people trapped in similar situations. Marcus slid into the seat across from me, looking considerably happier than he had a year ago. He'd lost weight, started running again, and most importantly, gotten therapy to process his pattern of rushing into relationships with the wrong people. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was murder." He ordered his coffee, then pulled out his phone. "Did you see Vanessa's latest Instagram post?" I'd blocked her on all social media, but Marcus periodically updated me on her public disasters. "Do I want to know? She's engaged again. 3rd one this year. This guy looks like he has money, but I did some research. He's actually broke, living off credit cards and family loans, trying to maintain an image of wealth he doesn't have. Perfect match then, right? 2 people pretending to be something they're not. Enablers finding each other." He showed me the photo. Vanessa looked older, harder around the eyes. The entitled behavior that had once been masked by youth and beauty was now visible in every filtered selfie. My dad ran into her at a charity event last month. She tried to talk to him about reconciliation with me, hinting that she'd learned her lesson. He told her I was happily engaged to someone else and walked away. "How is Emily?" I asked. I'd met Marcus's new fiancée twice, a high school teacher who volunteered at animal shelters and laughed at his terrible jokes. She was genuine, kind, and treated everyone with respect. "She's amazing. We're taking it slow this time. No rush. My dad actually likes her, which is huge, and she knows the whole story about Vanessa and the wedding drama. She says she's grateful it happened because otherwise I might have wasted years in that marriage before finally seeing the truth." We talked for a while about his wedding plans, about my work at the hospital, about normal things that people who weren't dealing with family betrayal still talked about. It felt good, this friendship we'd built from the wreckage of his disastrous marriage to my sister. After Marcus left for work, I walked the 2 blocks to County General, badge slipped to my scrubs, ready for another 12-hour shift. As I passed through the lobby, I saw a young woman arguing with security, tears streaming down her face. She was trying to get to the NICU but didn't have proper visitor credentials. I approached carefully. "I'm Claire, one of the NICU nurses. Can I help?" She turned to me, and I saw the same expression I'd worn so many times over the past year, desperate, exhausted, at the end of her rope. My baby was born at 26 weeks. They said only parents could visit, but my mother-in-law keeps showing up and harassing the nurses, saying terrible things about me, claiming I'm an unfit mother. The security guard says she's on some kind of list. I checked with security. Sure enough, there was a restraining order in the system preventing the mother-in-law from coming within 500 feet of this woman or her baby. The young mother had filed it after the woman had tried to take the premature infant from the NICU against medical advice. "You did the right thing," I told her as I escorted her upstairs. Family members who violate boundaries, especially around vulnerable babies, need to face consequences. That restraining order will protect your child. She looked at me with hope mixed with guilt. Everyone keeps telling me I'm overreacting, that she's just concerned, that I should forgive her and let her visit. But I know she'd try to take my baby again if she could. Am I wrong to keep her away? I thought about my own restraining order, about Vanessa sitting in jail for 4 hours after her arrest, about my mother's screaming phone calls telling me I was destroying the family. You're not wrong. Your job is to protect your child, not to manage other people's feelings. If she wanted access to her grandchild, she shouldn't have tried to kidnap a medically fragile infant. The relief on her face was profound. Sometimes people just needed permission to prioritize their own well-being over family peace. That evening, I attended a support group for people dealing with family estrangement. Judge Henderson had recommended it to me months ago, and I'd been going weekly ever since. There were 8 of us tonight, ranging in age from 23 to 67, all dealing with the aftermath of cutting off toxic family members. A new member, a man in his 40s, shared his story. His parents had stolen his identity, ruined his credit, and then demanded he help fund his sister's wedding. When he'd refused and reported the identity theft, his entire extended family had turned against him. "I keep thinking I'm crazy," he said, voice shaking. "They all say I'm overreacting, that family is supposed to forgive, that I should just let it go. But they stole from me. They committed crimes. Why am I the bad guy for reporting it?" "Because you exposed their dysfunction," I said. "You refuse to play the game where everyone pretends everything's fine while you suffer in silence. That's threatening to people who benefit from the dysfunction." He looked at me with recognition. "You're Claire Morgan, from that viral wedding video." I nodded. "My sister assaulted me at her reception because I wouldn't give her my home. My parents stole my inheritance and destroyed my credit, then expected me to just accept it. When I pressed charges and filed lawsuits, they told me I was destroying the family. But I wasn't destroying anything. I was just refusing to be destroyed." The group facilitator, a therapist named Dr. Reyes, added, "What Claire did, what many of you have done, is draw a line and say, this behavior is unacceptable. That's not vindictive. That's self-preservation." After the meeting, several people approached me, thanking me for sharing my story publicly, saying it had given them courage to leave their own toxic situations. I exchanged numbers with the man whose story mirrored mine so closely, promising to connect him with my lawyer who specialized in identity theft cases. Walking back to my apartment that night, I passed the building where I'd lived with roommates 10 years ago, sharing a basement space while saving every dollar. I thought about that version of myself, exhausted and broke, but determined, with no idea of the betrayals that had already been committed against her. She'd had her inheritance stolen before she even knew it existed. Her credit had been destroyed when she was 19. She'd been set up to fail before she'd even started, but she'd succeeded anyway. We'd succeeded anyway. My phone buzzed with an email from my lawyer. The final payment had cleared. My parents had paid off the full settlement amount, $50,000 plus interest plus legal fees. It had taken them 14 months of monthly payments. Months where they'd had to cut back on expenses, explain to friends why they were suddenly struggling financially, face the reality that their actions had legal consequences. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired and sad and relieved. The money would go straight into my retirement account, the account I should have been able to start funding 7 years earlier if they hadn't stolen from me. It wouldn't make up for the years of struggle, but it was something. That weekend, I had lunch with Aunt Teresa, who'd flown in from Seattle specifically to see me. We met at a nice restaurant downtown, the kind of place I could now afford occasionally without anxiety. "Your father called me last week," she said after we'd ordered. "He wanted me to ask you if there was any chance of reconciliation. Your mother's been sick, stress-related issues, and he thinks seeing you might help." "What did you tell him?" "That I'm not his messenger service. And if he wants to talk to you, he should respect your boundaries and go through proper channels." She paused. "But I'm curious what you'd say if he did reach out." I thought about it carefully. I'd say that I'm open to a relationship eventually, but only if they get therapy and demonstrate real change over time. Not just apologies, but actual behavioral change. And only if they acknowledge the full extent of what they did, not minimize it or make excuses. That seems reasonable. It probably won't happen though. My mother won't go to therapy, and my father won't push her. They'll wait for me to give in and reach out first, to be the bigger person and let it go. That's how it's always worked before. But not this time. Not this time. I looked at my aunt, this woman who'd taken the time to tell me the truth even though it cost her relationship with her brother. "Thank you for what you did. Giving me that will, telling me about the inheritance. You didn't have to get involved." "Yes, I did. I watched them favor Vanessa over you for years and said nothing because it wasn't my place. But when I found out they they'd stolen from you on top of everything else, I couldn't stay silent anymore. Some things are too wrong to ignore. After lunch, I walked through the city park near my apartment, watching families enjoying the late autumn weather. Kids on playgrounds, parents pushing strollers, couples holding hands, normal families doing normal things. I'd mourned the family I'd lost, or rather, the family I'd never actually had. The idealized version where parents loved both children equally, where siblings supported each other, where money didn't matter more than relationships. That family had never existed for me. What I'd lost was an illusion, and what I'd gained was reality and freedom. My phone rang. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. Claire Morgan, an unfamiliar woman's voice. Yes? My name is Dr. Amanda Foster. I'm a psychology professor at the State University. I'm conducting research on family estrangement and public perception following viral incidents. Your case has been cited in over 200 articles and academic papers this year. I was hoping you'd be willing to participate in a study about how social media changes our understanding of family violence. I almost laughed. My sister's wedding drama had become an academic case study. What would that involve? An interview about your experience, how the public attention affected your healing process, whether you think viral documentation of family violence helps or hurts victims in the long run. Your perspective would be invaluable. I'll think about it and get back to you. After hanging up, I realized I'd stopped being surprised by these calls. The wedding reception assault that had felt like the end of my world had become something larger, something that meant different things to different people. To some, I was a symbol of standing up to family abuse. To others, I was an example of how social media destroys privacy. To academics, I was a case study in changing family dynamics. But to myself, I was just Claire Morgan, a NICU nurse who'd refused to be victimized anymore. Everything that came after that decision, the viral videos, the legal battles, the public attention, was just the natural consequence of finally valuing myself as much as I valued everyone else. 6 months later, I accepted Dr. Foster's invitation and did the interview. It was published in a psychology journal, then picked up by mainstream media. The article talked about how witnessing my case had given other victims of family abuse permission to pursue legal consequences, how the viral nature of the wedding videos had created a cultural conversation about entitlement and favoritism. Vanessa's third engagement ended when her fiancé discovered her criminal record and the full story behind it. My mother's stress-related illness turned out to be manageable high blood pressure, not the life-threatening crisis my father had implied. My parents slowly rebuilt their social circle, though they were now known as those people whose daughter had them arrested for identity theft. They never reached out directly, never got the therapy, never demonstrated the change I'd asked for. Instead, they waited for me to cave, to decide that family peace was more important than self-respect. They waited for me to be the bigger person and forgive without apology or accountability. They're still waiting. As for me, I continued working at County General, saving premature babies and supporting their families through crisis. I bought a better car with part of the settlement money. I went on a vacation to Greece, my first real vacation in 5 years. I started dating someone I met through the support group, another survivor of family betrayal who understood why certain boundaries mattered. Life wasn't perfect. I still had moments of grief for the family I'd never have, still dealt with judgmental relatives who thought I should forgive and forget, but I also had genuine friendships, meaningful work, and the satisfaction of knowing I'd stood up for myself when it mattered most. The wedding drama that destroyed my family ultimately saved me. It forced me to choose between being a good daughter and being a whole person. I chose myself, and despite everything it cost, I'd make the same choice again. Because sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to participate in your own destruction. And sometimes karma justice is simply watching people face the natural consequences of their own actions while you build a life they can no longer touch. What do you think of this story? Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who felt entitled to your resources or your sacrifice? Have you ever watched someone face consequences for behavior that had been enabled for years? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If this story resonated with you, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching until the very end. What do you think of this story? Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who felt entitled to your resources or your sacrifice? Have you ever watched someone face consequences for behavior that had been enabled for years? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If this story resonated with you, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching until the very end.